Hi everyone, I'm just back from seeing The Long Walk, probably the most disturbing mainstream film that I've seen in years. It's directed by Francis Lawrence, who directed a number of the Hunger Games films, but this is actually an anti-Hunger Games film because it is against all the world building and the explicitness of the Hunger Games films. We understand by implication that this happens in a dystopian society filled with authoritarianism, violence and brutality and poverty, but none of that is shown. Instead of seeing the context, what we see is the violence. The young men who go on this endless walk, the only way it can end is when all of them drop except one, and if you drop, you're shot, come to horrific ends. They are shot at point blank range. We see it. This is not a film for anyone who is squeamish about violence. In other words, this is actually a film about bodies going through hell. And it's a film about the relationships that people reveal and form when they're under that level of physical stress. It has felt to me closer than anything else I've seen to capturing some of the fear and horror of this moment in America. I mean, I'm seeing it now, and it came out, I think, a little while ago in the States, I'm not sure, but it feels incredibly timely because it is about the effects and the meaning of violence. I think that the performances are very, very well sustained. I think the central characters, although there's a predictability to the way their relationships evolve, the concentration, the inwardness of the characters is brilliantly sustained. I don't know how much walking these poor actors had to do in order to make this film, but they bring emotion to their movement. In other words, this isn't a film that depends on showy gestures. It's a film about intimate physical experience and the shared moments of camaraderie that have this kind of stand by me quality that King obviously brings out well in his original novel. That feels earned. It feels like these people really have reached this level of intimacy with each other through this horrific experience. In other words, everything that is kind of blocky and generic in the Hunger Games films, although I do like the first one a lot, is is much more stripped down in this film. And that's the paradox that I really want to bring out, which is that instead of feeling as though we need to learn everything about this dystopian alternative reality in order to see its parallels with our own, the film feels like our reality because actually everything that mediates it is stripped away. There are no phones, there are no screens, nobody is filming them from the side of the road. They're not contacting anyone on a mobile phone. I think the original novel was set in the 60s. Here, the meaning and the effect of the allegory is allowed to grow because we can read it almost any way we want. It could be literally about gun violence, and it is. It could be about compliance and complicity and the way in which we are conditioned to accept certain forms of authority. It could be about friendship, and I think it is powerfully about love. But it could also be about something more particular and more typical of Stephen King, which is bad fathers, something that all these men seem to have in common as the film goes on. In other words, like the best action movies and the best horror movies, it allows those meanings to circulate through it without being too overt about them. Every single time it looks like part of the human drama is about to get layered and complicated, a simple physical act of violence, the shooting of yet another frail man who has fallen to his knees or been unable to walk, intervenes. That could be stupidly brutal. It feels almost borrowed from something like the Saw franchise at times, that mixture of physical torment and emotional torment. But here, the effect is that we feel the intimate colonization of our lives by political brutality. We don't really need a backstory. What we need is an emotion. We need to come away from this film knowing that it has shown us human feeling and human relationships crushed under the wheel of totalitarianism. That's all we need. We don't actually need any more detail than that. It would spoil it. As a result, it is stark, it is cruel, and for those reasons, it's almost the most avant-garde mainstream film I've seen in ages. You're waiting for resolution, and you get one in one sense to the plot, but at the very end, I'm not going to give away what happens, and there are no spoilers here, but you are waiting throughout the film to see what's going to happen if someone wins this contest and how they will reintegrate into society, what society offers the winner of the long walk. And all I can tell you is that the end will surprise you. And we are left, in some ways, with more questions than answers. In some ways. I found myself really genuinely tormented by this film in a way that I didn't expect, and I think that's what it has to recommend it. But it has to come with a health warning. Go if you're ready for that level of intensity.